today? Good, good. We're well into September. Oh no! And perhaps that's the case, that you're here because you want to find out, is what I'm dealing with sciatica or not? Is it something else? So hopefully this will give you a better grasp of what sciatica is and whether what you're dealing with might be something different. And we can have a little conversation at the end kind of detailing that. So again, good morning. I'm Dr. Rice from Waupaca Chiropractic Center. Haven't been here for a couple months, had a busy summer, and now we're back into the fall scheduling. And welcome to the Senior Center. So we're going to talk sciatica. Indeed, it's not just a pain in the you-know-where. It definitely it runs down the leg. Plenty of chairs. Come on in. You're quite welcome. Yeah. Someone up here on the side. So let's go to the basic. So what is sciatica? Typically, sciatica will involve the lower back to some degree. A lot of folks don't have actual back pain with it. It starts at that buttock and hip and then continues down one leg. Some people are unfortunate enough to have it down both legs. That's pretty miserable. And typically it is at the back of the leg. Specific sciatica symptoms will go down the back of the leg. If it's coming to the side or the front, then we have some other nerve involvement. There's some chairs back here. Feel free to step in and grab a seat. Here. I can even send this one back here. Our video, you are quite welcome. Quite welcome. Send this one back here. Okay. Well, hello.
To leave in 15 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to move through this video for you. So, as we were saying, if you're dealing with sciatica, if it's true sciatica, you're going to have pain down the back of that leg. For most people, it tends to stay in the buttock, hip, thigh area. Sometimes it will continue down into the calf, into the foot. This is a long nerve pathway, but truly the key factor, if it's going to be called sciatica, it has to have pain down the leg. So, why is it called sciatica? Because the nerve that causes all of that difficulty is the sciatic nerve. Or as my brother-in-law calls it, it's my psychotic nerve. It drives him crazy. But it is the largest and longest nerve in our body. It starts way up here near the waist and travels all the way down the leg. Up here, that's a really large nerve bundle. It comes off several levels of the spine, bundles up to something about the size of your thumb. So it's a pretty massive nerve structure. And it connects all the way, low back, waistband, all the way down to the foot. But it splits. It branches, again, L4, L5, meaning lumbar spine. Your lumbar spine is here. There are 5 of them, so nerves come off the lowest 2 levels, sometimes even from the 3rd level, as well as the top of the tailbone, bundled together, travel through the hip girdle, and a lot of it is traveling behind this tailbone, inside, until it hits about the middle of that buttock. That's where it comes through the sciatic notch, and it's implying that in that picture, and then travels further down the leg. It splits at the knee and branches out into additional fibers. And there are nerve fibers coming off throughout the thigh as well to handle muscle activity, joint mechanics, sensation, pain, cold, temperature, things of that sort. I mean, it provides nerve information for essentially the entire lower limb. So what causes sciatic pain? Because it's such a long nerve, irritation can be caused at lots of different locations along that entire pathway. So that's the challenge in figuring out where's the problem. It may be because of arthritic changes at the spine, as that ages. Could be truly some disc involvement, those cushions between the segments of the spine. Could be simply a muscle strain, so you have some muscular spasming and tension, putting pressure on that nerve somewhere along its path. Or maybe a direct injury, that you did have a fall or such, and it's causing, again, bruising, swelling, pressure on that nerve. In the past, I know we've talked about, there's been a study done as to how much pressure a nerve will tolerate before it's going to change its ability to send and receive messages. And they determined that the pressure that's equal to the weight of a dime is enough to change a nerve's action. So that's not a whole lot. So you can imagine how much pressure builds up, say, if you bruised it or have had a muscular strain, let alone some bulging discs. So indeed, maybe it's because of arthritic changes, aging of that spine. As that spine ages, the discs thin, the bone structure starts to form some calcium deposits, and indeed it goes into those areas where the nerves are exiting the spine, so it's becoming narrower. So pressure directly on that spinal nerve as it's coming out of the spinal column may be where your sciatica is starting. Maybe it's because the disc is aging as well, and it's starting to bulge out. So this is a picture looking down your spine. This is what you feel sticking out. This is the main part of that disc, that cushion. And indeed, if we have injuries where that disc is frayed, torn, and it starts bulging out into that space where the nerve is exiting, that might be putting pressure on the sciatic nerve or others. Maybe it's because of that, again, a muscle strain, and that muscle entraps it because it's swollen and irritated. And one of the primary sites is a little muscle called the piriformis. And it comes from this bony point we have on the side, and it connects to the edge of the tailbone. So it crosses right over the center of the hip. And that's often the major player in sciatic pain that's very focused right in the center of that buttock, the piriformis. And then we have our glutes and our hamstrings and multiple, again, muscle groups down the leg that might get injured or strained and cause irritation to this long nerve fiber that's traveling the whole course of our leg. And again, certainly an injury, and we know people or ourselves who have had some pretty significant bruises, and if that happens along that nerve pathway, certainly that could be causing sciatic type radiation. So what do you do? In most cases, certainly that I see in my office, sciatica is probably because of that aging spine and overuse, abuse of musculature where it's strained and such, and those fibers that surround that nerve pathway are irritated and putting pressure on it. No matter what the factor, it almost always, backspace, it always is going to involve some swelling and irritation, inflammation. All of those four areas I just identified involve some swelling. So that's where you start, by controlling any swelling and inflammation, and reduce further irritation of the tissues by not using that leg, hip, back any more than necessary, at least during that first phase. If this is a new episode, you need to follow the Rice protocols. And I didn't make this up. I just happen to have the last name. So the Rice protocols for any kind of muscular strain, again, when you're dealing with pain, inflammation, rest the area that's irritated. So in a sciatica situation, you're going to rest your lower back and hip and leg as much as you can. Don't ask those muscles to work anymore and cause further irritation. Ice, something cool, especially if, again, if it's a new episode, if it's just flared up, cool that area wherever it's most irritating, but you want to catch that low back as well. Even if that's not seeming to be too involved, that's the source of that sciatic nerve. So cool that down. Again, if it's a new episode, the rule always is for the first day or so, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, and then you can gradually extend how frequently you're using that cool compress to 2 or 3 times a day over the following week, etc. Compress. Use a compress. I should say a compression wrap, a low back belt, something to support those tissues. An actual girdle sometimes is helpful, just to aid those muscles so they're not working so hard and causing further irritation. So that's not a bad idea, especially again in that first week, couple weeks, if you have a recent flare-up. And that's true for kind of back pain of any sort, pain of any sort. If you can use a supportive garment so that muscle doesn't have to work so hard, it's not going to continue to spasm and be irritated and swell. And then elevate. Certainly in a sciatica situation, any additional pressure because of circulation and swelling that might occur is going to create additional pain. So when you can, ice, rest, elevate that leg if it's involved in a sciatica type pattern. So rest, ice, compress, elevate. Easy mnemonic to remember. In addition, if you're dealing with, again, that hip and leg pain, use of a cane or crutch for a few days so you're not asking those muscles to work so hard. Take advantage of any tools you might have available for that. Certainly over-the-counter pain relievers, anti-inflammatories, if you're able to use those, and for some of you, other medications kind of dictate what you can and can't use. But certainly they can help, especially again, if it's a new episode. You want to keep that inflammatory reaction in check. Gentle stretching for those muscles throughout that whole low back, hip girdle, leg. And we'll have a diagram in a bit about a few stretches we can do. But I'm a little biased, but of course, you can choose chiropractic care to help aid that recovery. Again, sciatica, like lots of other health issues, start at the spine. So going back to help that spinal structure work efficiently again, not get so guarded and tight and restricted, is going to aid that process of healing. So that's where, again, gentle stretching and movement is important, because you need to return those structures back to their normal movement patterns. So in chiropractic's case, we'll do some adjusting along with some exercise recommendations. Maybe use of physiotherapy such as electrical stim, ultrasounds, those type of, again, additional therapies to help ease muscle spasming, reduce that pain and swelling. Other conservative methods. I mean, that's our ball game. As a chiropractor, we see this a lot. So let's talk a little bit about some gentle stretching that you can do if you're dealing with, and these are good for low back as well. Some of the stretches for the legs are real specific to sciatica. This one I like for all kinds of back pain. It's simply laying on the floor and flattening your back, arching your back, flattening your back. That's the natural movement that should occur when you go between a sit and a stand, right? Our spine kind of flattens in a sit, it arches a bit in a stand. So encouraging that motion to happen in a nice relaxed state helps bring it back to those natural movement patterns. Always just nice, easy, knee to the chest. And when you're dealing with some sciatica, you might add that knee to the opposite shoulder. So you're stretching, again, that piriformis muscle, stretching that hip girdle. Always, this is not a no pain, no gain situation. Gently, within tolerance, go at it gradually over the first few days to help ease some of that muscle tension but not irritate it further. Same is certainly true of these more perhaps aggressive positions. They might come into play after a couple days. Crossing one leg over the other and gently stretching it further open. Help that hip return to its full range of motion. This one shows him drawing both legs up. You cross a leg and then draw both of them closer in to your chest. That's really going to stretch across this hip. So again, you go at it gently. You can certainly use a belt or scarf on this lower leg to aid it, because this is a tough position to get into for a lot of folks. But you can certainly use an aid to help you raise those legs. And this one is showing someone laying on the floor with one leg up the wall, the other one is through the doorway. You might be starting with a chair, and one leg is alongside, and one leg is on the chair. And that might be all the farther your leg will allow you to raise it initially, and gradually increase the height of that to stretch that hamstring area where that sciatic nerve is traveling. And again, you can come back to this PowerPoint imaging on Win TV anytime, right? Or on the computer, I should say. You can find these on, what's our website?
WaupacaWinTV.com.
Waupaca?
Yeah, .net.com.
Waupaca Win TV. And you can bring up these PowerPoints anytime and find these stretches. And I wanted to specifically talk about this piriformis muscle stretch, because indeed that's often a huge player in sciatic type radiation, because it crosses the hip right there and that sciatic nerve exits right there. If it's irritated, and that can happen from so many tasks we do, gardening, climbing ladders, doing housework, we're using these hip and buttock muscles a lot. And again, we have those project days where we really kind of overdo it, and that might be the case, where we really stress that piriformis, and it's going to be put pressure on that sciatic nerve. So an easy stretch to help reduce some of that strain right on the sciatica is laying with a small ball. Tennis ball is probably is about the right size. Again, you might cool it down even and make it a cool pressure. I even have people just roll up a sock really tight in a bundle and rest with that under your hip for a couple minutes to start with, and see again if that tolerates that. And the idea is simply to gently stretch that piriformis muscle so it's no longer putting pressure on that sciatic nerve when you're upright, when that muscle is active. Okay, so that's another thing you can test. Sciatica can be managed and resolved to some extent. As with any issue like this, muscle strain and related nerve irritation, once that's happened, unfortunately it tends to come back more readily if you continue to irritate those structures. So it really is an issue of then managing those symptom patterns by heeding the message. When things start to show up that I'm having, oh, yep, I'm feeling that little bit of twinge, maybe just a little more pressure, take those early signs and follow some of those RICE protocols early on. Nip it in the bud. Take care of yourself. And certainly, if symptoms, as always, if they are lingering for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, and they're not improving much, you need to seek some help from some healthcare provider, whoever you're comfortable with, and see if they can't aid that process and rule out, other underlying issues that might be more significant than just, in this case, sciatica. Okay? Thanks for coming. Hope that answered some of those questions. Yes?
I was just pulling this up, and it's wintvwaupaca.com.
Thank you. So you can...
And I do have a question.
Yeah.
Is the sciatica nerve always in the back of your leg?
Yes. I mean, it's deep. It's very central through the thigh. It's like it's under this hamstring muscle. But you're going to feel it. If it's truly a sciatic nerve involvement, you're going to feel it on the back of the thigh. If you're feeling pain more to the side or the front, then we have the lateral femoral nerve and the obturator nerve, which also help control and provide sensation to those parts of the thigh. And they start just above the sciatic nerve in that lumbar spine. So we have obturator, lateral femoral, sciatic nerve, kind of in that order. But again, we're all different as far as where those nerves truly source themselves, and they intermingle a bit. But again, as a general rule, Sciatica is the back of the leg.
Those exercises, can you do them on the bed, or you should do it on the floor?
You can do it on a bed if it's relatively firm. I'd be okay with that. And especially when it's hard to get up off the floor for a lot of folks. Do it on a surface where you can get on and off that surface readily.
I wanted to ask a question about walking. Is walking aggravated, or is it a good thing to do?
In general, I'm going to say walking is wonderful for it. But again, you have to heed the message. Again, if walking you're finding that that's getting sore, you have to reduce how far you walk initially. So I want the movement, but you don't want to push it to the point where it's asking that muscle to work so hard that now it's irritated again.
Yeah, because that's a little bit. She likes to take it easy because she's got sciatic nerve, I believe, behind.
Okay.
And I like to walk quickly, which is good for your heart, I guess.
That's true. That catch-22. You want to get your heart rate up, but indeed, if that's irritating a leg and hip, you have to go at it gradually. But that should improve the more you walk. But you have to start slowly, like any new exercise regimen after you've had an injury. You got to go at it gradually.
Well, I usually take a quick walk in the morning, and then later on we'll take a nice slow walk for her, which
Bless your heart.
eventually she will be able to speed up, I believe.
Exactly. And certainly in your case, take advantage of your ability to walk a little quicker. Get that heart rate up. Okay.
Okay, rice.
Rest,
Rest,
ice, compress.
Compress,
So use a compression. Yep.
and exercise.
And elevate.
And
Elevate. But exercise is a good option too. Once you're past that acute phase, then you want to exercise as well. Early on, I'm going to say heat is not your best choice because you're encouraging more swelling. You're opening blood vessels, drawing fluid. So after the first 48 to 72 hours, I don't mind heat being applied and even alternating. Cool, then heat, then cool again. Change the temperature on that area to create that flushing effect. But you don't want to do heat certainly at the end of the day, just before bed. Then you're asking, again, those tissues to be swollen all night. And that often will cause that morning, oh, I can't get out of bed type of feeling. Everything's stiff and sore because of that swelling that's just kind of sat there all night. So again, heat can be helpful a little after that acute phase, but you want to use it for, again, 20 minutes or so and take advantage of that warmth and then maybe do some of those stretches gently to encourage that joint mechanics, muscle movement to happen again. Okay?
Sitting for a long time in like an office chair seems to aggravate my...
Yeah. And real common. So again, I encourage you to try some of these stretches and definitely have a good low back support for your chair. Again, whenever you can, change positions, but having a support here, so again, it aids those muscles so they are not holding the weight of your torso for this prolonged period will also help. So having something that really you can sit against and feel like your back is supported will help. Again, certainly changing your leg position when you're sitting every once in a while. Yes, exactly.
I have a question. What about those balls that you see secretaries sitting on every now and then?
I think a good idea because it helps work those small muscles of the spine because it's not absolutely stationary. But certainly someone who's already dealing with some back, hip, sciatic type symptoms, that might be too much. You might last, again, 10 minutes on it, which is good, but I wouldn't ask them to be sitting on it all day. But certainly a good tool for kind of anyone for core strengthening, simply to sit on for 10, 15 minutes a day, because just that little bit of wobble that happens with the ball engages these muscles, those deep core muscles.
You have to be careful with one of those balls though, because I remember in Milwaukee, one guy, 83-year-old, was using one and it blew up.
Oh no!
It had been withdrawn from the market and they hadn't withdrawn it 2 years before.
Wow.
And he fractured his spine.
Oh no!
Yes.
He had some glue put in his spine, which my chiropractor, he didn't know about. She'd never heard of glue, but we were in California.
Okay.
Put it in Sheila's broken wrist.
It is. It's amazing that they use bone glue now. But indeed, yes, you have to be careful with these balls. So certainly putting them in between two safe surfaces that you can hold on to initially as well if you're going to, if you've never been on one, go at it slowly, cautiously.
And our daughter bought a machine for us, and it's about this high. And you lay on your back and put
Your ankles?
on it. I've forgotten the name of it now, but
It massages your butt. Well,
Under your thighs. A back to life or one of those devices, which I, again, see some value in, creating motion.
it wouldn't be harmful though, would it?
I really don't think so. Again, as long as it's set an appropriate height for you, the setup is appropriate, it should be all very safe.
What mine bothers me the worst is if I ride any distance in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I've had it get so bad that I've had to pull to the side of the road, get out of the car and walk around a little bit
Yeah,
to relieve that and then get back in, and it was,
better again.
but I also use the lumbar
Good,
support
good.
in my car seat.
Okay, and that helps somewhat, or
It
does
takes the pressure
pressure off?
like you were talking
Yes.
about.
Yes, and that's what I would say. If you're noticing in the car, look for an additional lumbar support type cushion. I know at the office we have just an inflatable cushion that's kind of nice, where you fill it up at whatever amount seems appropriate for you, either for your back or even to sit on for a while. And that kind of works like the ball in a way as well, but it changes, again, the pressure pattern through that hip girdle. I would encourage you to try that tennis ball stretch, because that implies to me that that piriformis muscle in this position is pulled extra tight, and that's irritating that
I was
sciatica.
told by a chiropractor to take my billfold out of my left pocket.
Absolutely.
Put it over here on the other. No, really.
Interesting. And I don't know that I agree putting it in the other one to try and change the pattern, but I'd take it out completely and not be sitting on a wallet. Yeah. Put it somewhere safe. Yes.
And I thought this was a lot of pain in the butt.
Yes.
A good sleeping position, because that bothers me too.
Exactly. So sleeping, again, ideally would be very flat on your back and straight. For a lot of people, that's not comfortable because of your back. Then I would go to your side and certainly the cushion between your legs. Try and level out that hip girdle by supporting that upper knee. Yeah, level things out the best you can. Those body pillows are nice options as well, where you can, again, put some extra cushion. If you tend to be more of a stomach sleeper, heaven forbid, then you have something to maybe keep you from rolling to your stomach completely. But those are, again, you do the best you can to support structure. Keep it in neutral as best you can. Okay. Thanks for coming. What a good group. I'll be back in October. I am open to suggestions. Someone asked a very generic one as far as what you'd like to hear about, but again, feel free to have Terry send me a note if you come up with something interesting. Just arthritis in general? Yeah, and we've done some of that, but it's, again, a topic that everyone knows, realizes, most everyone. And again, it's good to hear the message a few times and say, oh, that's right. I've heard that before, but let's implement those little tools in our home care efforts. Okay, deal. Go enjoy the day. It's going to be a beauty. And Walk for Wellness is in 2.5 weeks out at Swan Park. We offer a 1 mile, 5K, and 10K walk, non-competitive. It's a walk, but the funding is directed toward helping continue the River Ridge Trail. And Waupaca has about almost 26 miles, or maybe over, of trails already established, so they have to maintain those trails and hopefully keep adding on. I'd love to see the day when they're absolutely connected throughout the city. Wouldn't that be cool? So, if you have time, that Saturday morning, come and join us. There's registration brochures here at the rec center. I think certainly upstairs, Terry might have some as well. Library, Chamber of Commerce, and at our office, Waupaca Chiropractic. All right, thanks.